Welcome to Qatar's Business Suite. This is not QSuite, but an entirely separate configuration that Qatar use on their 787-9 Dreamliners. I've seen people refer to this as QSuite Lite, as it looks similar and feels similar to QSuite but in a smaller space. But does this suite actually improve on QSuite in some ways, and is it worth the money? We'll find out on this 7-hour flight from Manchester to Doha. Let's get going. A 6 AM start this morning, and we're heading over to what many people consider to be the worst airport experience in the UK, and that's Manchester Airport. But let's go get checked in and see how we get on. Departing this morning from Terminal 2, which seems to have a few bits of renovation works ongoing, and when I made my way over to the check-in desk, I did notice there were some quite big queues forming. Thankfully though, there was a separate business class queue which was much shorter. Although I think everyone else apart from me in this queue seemed to have about 5 cases each that they were checking in, so even though it was a short queue, it did still take a bit of time before I was finally through. Not the friendliest check-in experience in the world, but it was efficient and I was soon on my way. When I went over to security, there was a sign saying that Fast Track was not currently available, so rather than take my chances in the regular queue just in case it was particularly busy, I was travelling on apparently what's one of the busiest weekends of the year for travel. So I walked over to security at the other side, which thankfully was open, and I was very quickly through. So far no big complaints at all when it comes to Manchester Airport. And once through security, it was time to go find the lounge. Now Qatar Airways have some of the best business class lounges in the world, but unfortunately they don't operate their own one in Manchester, so instead I was sent over to the 1903 lounge, and once I arrived over there it was actually a bit of a wait to get in. There was quite a long queue. So I was worried at first glance that it might be pretty busy in there, but they do actually just share a reception area with the escape lounge, so quite a few people in the queue were just waiting for that one. And once inside, it was a nice space. There was plenty of seating options, views out towards the planes, and a pretty good selection of food at the buffet. Plenty of spirits and wines on offer too if you're in the mood for it. But for me, I just stuck with sausage, bacon, eggs, hash browns, and of course a much needed coffee. Obviously the food and drink here nowhere near the quality of what you get in Qatar's own lounges, but as far as the quality goes for these contract lounges, this was a very good one. Not the best quality seat that I started in though. It was great for the views, but I wasn't too comfortable, so I did relocate to a nicer chair for a lot of the time that I was in there, which as it turns out wasn't a super long wait, and it was soon time to go board our plane. Manchester Airport does actually have the Ether private terminal, with packages between 100 and 200 quid, and I was tempted to use that service today just to try it out, but I just thought for the time of day I'll be absolutely fine just going to the lounge. I figured that things like security wouldn't be as busy as they maybe would be later on in the day as well, so being able to skip that with the private terminal probably wasn't as necessary today as it would be another time. And I'm glad I made that call. The airport experience here had been absolutely fine. And when you're on a business class ticket that's getting you fast track and lounge access anyway, that already makes the airport experience a lot more pleasant. Arriving at the gate, it wasn't too long before they called us all to board, and I was really looking forward to getting on and just trying out a new business class seat that I've not been on before. Unfortunately though, even though they called us to board, they weren't quite ready for us, and they actually had us queuing on a stairwell for at least 15 minutes, something I'm very used to doing with the likes of EasyJet, but not the typical business class Qatar Airways experience. Eventually we made it off the stairs to another area which we then had to queue in just outside the jet bridge, and then finally it was time to make it on board. The business suites for today's flight are in a 1-2-1 configuration, and this whole seat came about because the 787-9 is just a few inches too narrow to fit QSuite, and this was seen as a better offering than what they currently have on their 787-8s, which I flew on last year. And whilst these business suites may have a similar reverse herringbone layout, and a pretty similar general overall seat layout as the 787-8 version, the actual style and design of the seat is much more akin to QSuite, including the closing door and the level of privacy that's provided. Waiting at my seat was 2 pillows and a blanket, an amenity kit, and a refreshing towel. I threw the bedding in the overhead compartment and took my seat and was immediately impressed by the amount of legroom, which I found to be much better than what's available in QSuite, even if the total space in the suite is smaller. Over my left shoulder was a little storage compartment for a phone that does wireless charging, a really nice modern feature that works really well. Next to this was a small storage cupboard, and that contained the earphones for the flight, as well as a small bottle of water, and of course a mirror. Behind this was a lamp where you can adjust the light settings, and underneath you have the controls for the in-flight entertainment system, a charging port, including a USB-C charger which worked really well on this flight, and then underneath this shelf you have the seat controls. Ahead was a document holder containing today's menus as well as the safety cards, and to my right side was an armrest that could be fully adjusted and also opens up to be an additional storage area. Above the seats, each seat had individual reading lights and air vents, and this includes the middle seats, which don't get these on some QSuite layouts, and there's also an additional reading light above your shoulder. The tray table is deployed from underneath the in-flight entertainment screen, and it's a really good size. Once again, pretty similar to the one that you get on QSuite. The part that folds over balances well against that side table, making it a really sturdy surface as well. And then the final big similarity to QSuite is the fact that this one has a closing door. The door and walls are not quite as tall as QSuite, but they are very good. I received a very warm welcome from the cabin manager, and then I was offered a glass of champagne, which I very gladly accepted. It was still pretty early, but this was a great way to start off the flight. And that got me thinking about the drinks menu for today's flight. Some good champagnes on offer, including the Charles Heintic, which I just started with then. Plenty of other wines on offer as well, and then of course at the back we have the cocktail menu, which was the bit that I'm a bit more interested in. Although maybe not so much at 8 AM, I do find champagne goes down pretty easy at that time, but I'm probably not going to get on an old fashioned just yet. I then had a quick glance at the food on offer for today. As it was a morning departure, we were going to be starting off with the breakfast. Always the least exciting meal on a business class flight. There's not too much they can do with it, and eggs tend to be pretty bad quality on a flight as well. But there would be a second meal before landing, and I'd already ordered that Aberdeen Angus fillet online. I freshened up with the refreshing towelette that they provide. No hot towels on offer here. And the crew then came round handing out dates just as the jet bridge pulled back to finally let me look out my windows. This was then accompanied with some Arabic coffee to give another much needed caffeine hit. An overall dates, Arabic coffee and champagne seems like a pretty good way to start a flight to me. A refill was offered on the coffee, not on the champagne though, but that's probably for the best at 8 AM. And once the Arabic coffee was collected, the Kevin Hart safety demo started to play. And with that, we made our way out to the runway. And as we get going, let me just say a quick word about the cost of today's flight. Now normally a flight like this is going to set you back a few £1,000s. But as I often do for my flights, I used Avios. And although this flight in Qatar's Business Suite is just going to be taking us as far as Doha, the actual booking was to go on to Bangkok. And that second leg is one I was particularly excited for, as that's going to be in Qatar's A380 First Class. And the total cost of all of that, going from Manchester to Doha and then on to Bangkok, was 90,000 Avios, plus about £420 in taxes and charges. To me, that's an absolutely insane price when you consider that second leg is in first class, and if you were instead flying with British Airways, you'd use that same 90,000 just to go from Manchester to Doha. So that A380 first class video will be out very soon, so do make sure you subscribe and stay tuned to the channel for that. But for now, let's get up in the air and let's see what the business class experience is like in these suites. And once up in the air, it's time to kick off the shoes, get the seat reclined and make myself comfortable. Now I briefly mentioned this earlier, but I do really think the legroom on this seat is a lot better than what you get on QSuite, mainly because you can stretch your legs out further when they're on the ground, whereas on QSuite they have to be up in the cubby to be outstretched. Albeit when your feet are up in that foot cubby on these suites, it is still a little bit on the narrow side, but a really comfortable seat overall. To level up that comfort even more, I decided to try on the pyjamas that were handed out by the crew. These ones are a special edition for the F1, and the pack contained some slippers, as well as these light grey pyjama top and bottoms, and I made my way over to the loo to try them on. And I did notice that these bathrooms are pretty good. A few nice diptyque amenities on hand, including the all-important facial mist. Gotta give that a quick spray. And then additional amenities provided in the shelves, such as shaving kits and dental kits. The bathrooms also had two of my favourite airplane bathroom features. The first one, the window, and the second, the foot pedal for the bin. I feel like these should be mandatory on planes. There were also a couple of handy shelves that could be folded down to help when getting changed. So on that note, let's get these pyjamas on. As I mentioned, these are F1 special edition ones, and I do massively prefer them to the standard Qatar pyjamas. These seem much better quality than normal ones, especially the pyjama bottoms, which have pockets whereas the other ones don't. Back at my seat, I decided to try out the in-flight entertainment. There's a good sized screen, not the biggest in the world, but it is absolutely fine for the distance you are away from it, and it's really high quality. I also tried the provided earphones, which are of good quality, but it is worth noting you can also connect your personal earphones via Bluetooth on these flights. Really loving the seat so far. It's definitely a lot more private than you get in something like the Club Suite. Yeah, it's not quite as big and spacious as you get on the QSuite, but I've got a great living room here. It's really nice and comfortable. No complaints at all. Time for breakfast, and first up the crew have set my table with the tablecloth, the fake candle, and to start I'm having the fresh fruit plate. Really high quality, and I had no issue finishing my plate. And that's followed up by French toast with berries, figs and a pistachio thing, plus plenty of syrup. Yeah, that is really good. Exactly what you want from an airplane meal as well for a breakfast, because eggs are terrible, but something like French toast, pancakes is always going to turn out good. And Qatar tend to do it better than most. So yeah, I was really happy with that one. The second meal was definitely the one I was looking forward to the most, so it was a very nice surprise how much I enjoyed that one. It took me no time at all to demolish that, get my tray cleared, and then I was just left with my champagne, and I then ordered a cappuccino. Now I had actually ordered this the same time as breakfast, but it didn't actually come out, so I did need to remind the crew for that one, unfortunately. Really nice quality when it did arrive, and then the meal was finished off with a hot towel. Now that breakfast's out the way, let's have a quick look at the amenities provided. In addition to an eye mask and socks, you get a few things from Diptyque. So there's a fragrance, a moisturiser, a body lotion and a lip balm. They're all really good quality, but I will say that fragrance is pretty terrible. They have a few different varieties, but I always seem to get that rubbish one. I swear it just smells of cucumbers. As I had no intention of sleeping on this flight, I didn't want to bother the crew to set up a bed. They will offer to do that though, and you do get a proper mattress, 2 pillows and a really good quality blanket. But I did still want to test out the lie flat mode and just see what kind of space we're dealing with here. And it was more space than I expected. Things definitely do get a little bit narrow towards the end of the foot cubby, but it is quite long, and I do find that you've got a good amount of room around your body. And even without the mattress padding and the bedding, I did find it really comfortable to lie down here. And I don't think I'd have any issue getting comfortable and sleeping on an overnight flight in this. But for this flight I just spent most of the time in a partially reclined position, and I decided to start watching something on the in-flight entertainment. I went for The Fall Guy, which was a good choice, just a bit of a comedy action film. I actually decided to go for one of the mocktails on board, which is very unlike me to choose the non-alcoholic option. But it was very refreshing, which is exactly what I wanted. Quick word about the crew, who were absolutely fantastic as this flight, as I've come to really expect from Qatar. Very warm and friendly throughout the flight, they were also attentive and efficient. Yes, there was the odd occasion where something might have been forgotten, like with the cappuccino early on, and there was another point later on where they forgot a Coke that I ordered. But because they were so apologetic and they were friendly and otherwise really attentive and efficient, that more than made up for any errors. My second meal started with the Mediterranean meze. Not my favourite if I'm honest, I usually love the Arabic mezes that they serve, but this variation didn't quite do it for me. The Aberdeen Angus fillet on the other hand was absolutely delicious. Qatar does allow you to see the menus online on the app before you get on board, and you can make pre-order selections, and I was made sure that I pre-selected this one as I knew I'd definitely want to try this. So often beef dishes don't do well on planes, they can get very dried out and tough. But whenever I've had one with Qatar, I've always thoroughly enjoyed it, and today was no exception. Very happy to clear that plate. And I then rounded things out with a nice and light tiramisu. Overall, really impressed with the food on this flight, as I often am with Qatar. The main courses in particular have been absolutely delicious. And then after the meal, towards the end of the flight, I was brought a few more snacks from the crew. This was after they'd forgotten to bring the Coke. She then insisted on bringing me a few snacks as well. The crisps she brought were good, and then when chocolates came around for everyone, I grabbed one, but she insisted I had to take at least 2. Overall, I really enjoyed this flight, and it did surprise me in a few ways. I definitely think there's a few aspects where the seat improves on QSuite. As I've mentioned before, yes, it's not quite as private as QSuite, the walls and the doors are slightly lower, but it still offers so much more privacy than most reverse herringbone business classes do. And I think the legroom here is better than QSuite, and there's also little touches that are a bit better, like the wireless charging for the phone. Storage is much better too. Although QSuite has a bigger space overall, I think it can sometimes feel a little bit cramped because the overhead storage can be limited on QSuite. So often there's not room in the overhead storage to put things like your bedding, so you end up with all your bedding just inside the suite with you, and that really restricts some of the space. So although this business suite is smaller, it didn't feel that much smaller to me. And you are still getting those same soft product features that you get with all Qatar Business Class. You get a fantastic meal, good drinks, and really brilliant service from the crew. So is it worth flying on this configuration? Absolutely. Honestly, I personally put it about on par with QSuite. and I'd be equally happy flying in either one. Appreciate not everyone will agree with that, and I'd be really keen to hear your comments. Do you think the enhanced privacy and space you get with QSuite makes it better? And if you've flown on this configuration, what did you think of it? Now obviously I've talked quite a bit in this video about QSuite, and I've also mentioned the business class that Qatar uses on their 787-8s and their A380s. So if you want to see what either of those experiences are like in a bit more detail, then go ahead and watch one of these videos next. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one, and I'll see you in that upcoming first class A380 flight.